In today's video, I'm bringing you guys a long-term review of the new Rocky Mountain Instinct C70. Hi, I'm Tess and welcome back to Dusty Betty. Today I am going to be talking to you guys about the new Rocky Mountain Instinct. I've had a few weeks on this. There's a lot of adjustments that you can make on this bike, and so it's been nice to take my time and really play around with that, and I'm excited to share some of my thoughts on this bike. If you want to check out my first look of this bike, I do recommend that. I've got it in the shop, up on a stand, and we can talk a lot about just, you know, some of the neat aspects of this bike. But today, yeah, we're gonna get into the nuts and bolts and do some riding as well. So this is Rocky Mountain's 140 mil travel trail bike, and it's got a 150 fork on it. That's a really great range for a bike. I feel like that 140 to 150 travel range is a threshold. After 150, it does start to get to be quite a lot of bike. So having a little bit less travel, I feel like it does give me some great climbing performance. But I've got that front end of the bike that can handle just a little bit more, which is nice when you're mashing down techie stuff at high speeds. So this particular build has Shimano Dior XT group set. It has a Float X shock. The fork is a Fox 36 Performance Elite. We've got some in-frame storage, and I have to say, of all the in-frame storage that I've tried, this one is definitely the sleekest design. It's probably the trapdoor is a little bit heavier than some, but it just clicks in so easily. There's also an air tag in there. So this bike, if you get a small or extra small, it's going to come on 27.5 wheels. This is a size medium, and so it's spec'd on 229s. They also use size-specific tubing, which is really nice because statistically, as rider height goes up, so does rider weight. And so it just ensures that someone who's riding an extra small isn't going to be riding a super stiff bike because it was designed to also hold, like, you know, 200, 250 pound dudes who are riding an extra large. I'm kind of a smaller, lighter rider. I'm sometimes riding smalls, sometimes mediums. I weigh 115 pounds, so size-specific tubing really makes a big difference for me. Helps me make sure that I get a frame that's not going to beat me up. There's a lot of adjustability on this bike. You can shorten or lengthen the chain stays. So a little bit longer might be a little bit more stable at high speeds, but shorter can, honestly, I think it's still great at high speeds, and it makes the back end a little more maneuverable in tight technical stuff. Another point of adjustment is this Ride 4. You can move this bolt around, and it can change the feel of suspension, steepen or slacken the seat tube angle and the head tube angle. The spot that I ended up keeping it in is the spot that puts the seat tube angle the steepest option. And technically, I believe this is also the least progressive feel, but I'll talk more about the suspension, but I really like it in general. This suspension has a very progressive feel to it. So the last adjustment point that I want to talk about is this reach adjust. So right now it's in the neutral position, but you can add 5 mil or minus 5 mil. So that's a range of 15 mil of adjustment. Now, this is excellent news for riders that tend to be in between bike sizes. So, you know, you can get the size that you feel best about and then dial it in that last little bit. Another reason why I might play around with this a little bit is if I was doing big mountain days in the summertime, you know, the kind of rides that you do, I don't know, really mountainy places like Colorado, where maybe it's like, you know, a half or a whole day ride. You know, you're going to be out there for a while. You're going to do some fun enduro downhill stuff, but you know you're also going to be climbing to some high elevation meadows. You know you're going to have to do some saddles, and shortening the reach on your bike a little bit on days like that can help save your energy a little bit. And at that point, when you're going downhill, having it be 5 mil shorter, at least for me, is pretty negligible because of how much benefit I'm getting, because I'm not getting exhausted. Now, also, this bike is on aluminum rims. I do feel like when I was getting used to this bike, sometimes it did feel a little bit draggy, and sometimes for me that has to do with wheel set, but these are aluminum wheels, so it's one of those things where it's like you could upgrade to some nice lighter carbon wheels and get this bike even lighter. At the time I'm filming this video, this C70 comes in at about $6,300. All right, let's do some riding. We'll talk more as we go, if I can breathe. First part's the climb. All right, we are on Soldier's Pass. Do this thing. Did I mention how grateful I am that this bike weighs 31 pounds and not 33? Makes a big difference. I can be a little bit critical of bikes that start to get into this amount of travel here in Sedona because the climbing is so much more technical and demanding. But I've been really impressed with this. This is probably the best climbing bike that I've been on with a 150 fork on it in Sedona in quite a while. So this next section, it's got a couple of moderately technical kind of rooty bits, but it's all set on a steep pitch. And so you just gotta dig deep for a minute. Short, but you gotta dig deep for that one. I'm not sure what it is about this bike, but it rides like something with a chainstay that's shorter than it is. And I actually mean that in a good way. I kind of like short chainstays. Just in terms of like, it's very maneuverable, quick response time on the turns. On the back end, it's kind of amazing because it's pretty typical chainstay length, 137 to like maybe 147 depending on how you adjust it. But anyway, I don't know what it is. I think trying to like look at the bike specs and be like, what is it about this bike that makes it so responsive and that back end feel good? And I think a lot of it might come down to the suspension platform on this one. Really awesome pedaling platform on this bike. Very firm, very efficient, which is really great. I took it on a climb last week. It's like an hour and a half of climbing and ledges, like climbing 8 to 12 inch ledges. And I was amazed. This bike did not wear me out the way I was expecting. Some of those climbs where it's just ledge after ledge after ledge, and it's hard to just keep staying on the gas, but this bike did really well. And I think a lot of it is that efficiency of the pedaling platform. All right, this is the other hardest climbing feature on here. That is a steep climb. Whew. Nice and busy out here today. Gotta share the trail with some hikers, but it's hard to fault anyone for wanting to be out here when it's so beautiful. You can come on through.
Thank you.
Yeah. Whee. I do love the feel of that rear suspension. Like, I think the thing that I like about more progressive suspension is I love the way it feels when it pumps. Just kind of amps up at the bottom of the travel and then springs you out of it better. And it's also awesome for climbing ledges, you know, if you're trying to spring off that back wheel. The more progressive suspension just feels so good. It's not that you can't do it on something that's a little more linear, but it's pretty awesome. And also, like, I've got this bike set, like I said, into the position that's the least progressive, but it's got the steepest seat tube angle, but it's still, the suspension still has a really great progressive feel. Adjustable geometry on bikes like this is really cool. And I mean, if you've never experimented with that, I would say it's never gonna change the entire flavor of the bike, but what it does is, you know, like when you're cooking, how if you add a little bit of salt or a little something sweet or a little bit of fat, you can bring certain aspects of the flavor of that dish to the forefront a little bit more. And that's what these adjustments to the geometry allow you to do. You're never gonna like completely change this into an entirely different animal, but you can bring certain flavors of the ride quality to the forefront, which is really fun. It's one of those things that I thought it was a little intimidating at first, but now that I've done it a few times, it's actually kind of fun to tinker around with and experiment, and you learn a lot about bikes and geometry by playing with it. I wanted to show you guys really quick my new glasses from Jebo. These ones are called Frequency. I feel like these fit my face so well. These are probably the most balanced looking fit for my face. of all of the ones that I've worn, which is pretty sweet. I've got a really petite face. I'm one of those people who, if I wanted to, I could probably wear one of the like Walmart or Target BB-8 or unicorn little kid helmets. Like, no joke, like my head and my face are just super small. But Jebo, they always have something in the offering that is designed around more petite faces, which is so nice for me. So I'm really digging these frequencies. These have reactive lenses. The range for the shading on these is 3 down to 1, which is almost clear. Not designed for night riding, but I've worn like their reactive lenses that go from 3 to 1. I've worn them night riding before. Probably not intended for that, but I've definitely gotten away with it before. So yeah. Anyways, if you guys want to save 30%, make sure you use my link. A lot of times when I get links from companies, it's like 10%, 15%. This will save you 30% at checkout. So make sure you use my link if you want to pick up some new sunnies from Jebo. Nice little shungry staircase. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh wait, but there's more climbing. So this bike can bust out a pretty dang solid climb, technical climb at that. I've really enjoyed the rear suspension, rear linkage setup on this bike. I love the firm pedaling platform. It actually, as we start going high speed downhill, it actually still has really great small bump compliance, which you don't always get those two attributes together, but it still has that. Another thing too is this bike has a lot of pop and play. I'm guessing maybe because of that progressive rear suspension feel, it almost feels at times like a bike that has a shorter chainstay. Sometimes if I'm, coming around kind of a technical corner, a drop takes me by surprise, I'm like, boop, like this bike just with so little input, I can just hit that drop, come down both wheels at the same time. So a lot of the geometry of this bike has a very aggressive kind of enduro feel to it, but this bike has a lot more pop and play than a lot of other bikes that I've been on kind of near this travel range. Its attitude feels a little bit more like a 130 travel trail bike in some ways, which I love. That's kind of my sweet spot. So yeah, let's point it downhill and go fast. Just so good. All the best attributes of having a little more travel, even that 150 fork. But it's just so playful on the back end, that progressive suspension feel. Never know what this corner's gonna look like. It's always a bit of a hot mess. There we go. Coming up on some of my favorite turns in Sedona. This trail's called Grand Central, and during the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival, it feels like Grand Central. It is busy, it's a popular trail, great one. It's a lot of traffic on festival weekend. Sometimes trail bikes in this travel range, they can become so plush and so stable that they just feel a little bit dead on the downhills, which probably makes sense, depending on where you ride or how you like to ride. But I like how alive this bike feels. I'm not doing like giant bunny hops or anything like that, but I like that if I see a root or a rock, I can get a loft off it really easy. This bike just stays alive as you start to get it up to speed, and it just keeps it really playful, which is really fun and something that I look for in a Sedona bike. Well, that was really fun going down Grand Central, but I want to throw a little more chunk at this before we wrap this up. So let's finish on a Brewer lap. Here we come on Brewer. high, low. Oh, that's so fun. Oh boy, this bike is fun. So who is this bike not for? I would say this bike is probably not for people who have the kind of trails where it's just hard to get up to speed. You know, I know there are parts of the country where even the Black Diamond trails, sometimes there's not a lot of elevation. It's very little elevation at a time. You can still have lots of tech, but it's difficult to get up to speed. This is the kind of bike you really want to make sure you've got some trails where you have some good gravity, and that you've got some good tech to throw at it so that it can really pop and play and come alive for you. This bike is also probably not for you if you like more of the magic carpet suspension feel. You like something that stays glued to the ground, tracks those really long, fast straight lines really well. This bike has a slightly different personality than that. Now the good news, who is this bike for? I would say this bike is for you if you have some trails where you've got some good high-speed tech that you can throw on it on the downhills, and you like that stability, but you like something that's gonna have some personality, some pop, some play, and just turn every trail into a playground. I think this bike has a great personality for that. I think this bike is also a great fit for you if you place a high value on climbing efficiency, and if you like that more progressive suspension feel, both climbing and descending, the feel of it pumping, the feel of the way that it plays off of things, and having that progressive feel when you're climbing ledges or doing like really short, hard efforts. You want that firm climbing, pedaling platform, then this is a great one for you. Now, not everybody needs that, because if you live somewhere where your climbs tend to be more like smooth fire road climbs, and then you just have super burly descents, there's a lot of parts of the country that are like that. You may not need that progressive suspension feel, that super firm pedaling platform, but I love it. Now, I will say, like, as bikes start to get to 140, 150, it's kind of at the edge of where I consider these being good Sedona bikes, you know, for where I live. But I would be more than happy to make this my Sedona bike. I feel like it has that good balance of, you know, burliness in the downhills. You can throw a lot of chunk at it, but it keeps it fun and playful. But I've got that climbing performance, which I really need. I mean, it was so fun for me to take this on a technical long climb, and it didn't wear me out. I also love the reach adjust. I hope we see more and more of that on trail bikes, because for those of you who, like me, are sometimes in between sizes, you know, having that ±5, you know, a range of 15 millimeters that you can play around with the reach gives you a lot of versatility. And while it's not something that I would tinker around with a ton, it is something I would probably adjust that if I was going on a trip to Colorado and planning on doing some, you know, all day and half day rides. I would tinker with that. So I haven't been on a lot of Rockies, and I didn't really know what to expect. I thought this was going to be more of a glued to the ground beast. I had an absolute blast riding this bike. It's going to be a sad one to send back, but I'm so glad that I got to spend, you know, a solid few weeks on it and really get to know this bike. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post in the comments below, and I will answer your questions as best I can. If you check out the description, there will be more information on this bike. Stay tuned and subscribe for more bike reviews. Thanks for watching. Get dusty.